With the first pick, with the second pick, with the third pick, with the fourth pick,
crashing the boards.
Select.
Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of Crashing the Boards. As always, I'm joined by Jordan Foote. I'm Evan Skilliter. Excited to bring you some more prospect breakdowns. It's been fun so far, Jordan. 5 episodes in. We've got a pretty good feel of some of the top talent. There's still quite a few left, especially first rounders and lottery picks, or projected first rounders and lottery picks to go over. And we have loads of hidden gems we could go over, but we're starting to run out of time. Draft's sneaking up on us.
Yeah, man, we might have to start doubling up or doing some more, like 4 per episode or something, because there's just so much talent to break down and not a lot of time to do it. But it's been a true blast so far. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been awesome for sure. Today, we are going to break down and analyze the games of VCU's Bones Hyland, Ohio's Jason Preston, and Houston's Quentin Grimes. If you missed last week's episode, make sure you go back, check that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Crashing the Boards. We broke down Jonathan Kuminga, Scottie Barnes, and Vrenz Bleijenbergh, as well as EJ Onu, who's NAIA prospect. So be sure to check that one out. You can also check out, we have different individual breakdowns. We have a player interview, working on some more of those as well. So make sure you subscribe. I think we're up to like 22, 23 subscribers.
I think we're at 24.
Oh,
we're moving up in the world, man.
Look at us go. Look at us go all the way to the moon. All the way to the moon with your help. Be sure to share with your friends as well. We'd really appreciate it. But we're going to get right into it. We're going to start with Bones Hyland, Nah'Shon Hyland, whatever you want to call him. Bones is probably the coldest nickname of any player in the draft this year and many other years. We should do like a power rankings of nicknames of basketball players at some point.
But, March Madness, like all names bracket.
I like that. I like that. We should consider it. I'd put Tractor Trailer up there, by the way. Classic one. But anyway, Bones is a 6'3", 170-pound shooting guard. He averaged 19.4 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, 2.08 assists to 3.08 turnovers, shot 44% from the field on 14.17 attempts, 37% from 3 on 7.75 attempts, and he was an 86% free throw shooter on 4.5 attempts. So Jordan, I don't think you can start anywhere with Bones other than his shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in this class, I think, especially when you combine the volume and efficiency. I remember his freshman year, he was at like 40%, 41% with like 3-point something attempts per game, like close to 4. He showed a lot more off-ball ability as a 3-point shooter. Then this year thrust into a primary creator role. And those 19.5 points, a lot of them were composed from the 3-point line. I mean, he can create his own looks. He has the ability to sidestep, step back, nice, clean pull-up jumper, really good NBA range, limitless range, I think, on that kid. Like, even once he crossed half court, he was a legit threat to like start pulling up and shooting. Yeah. And part of that's the offense. Part of that's how good he is as a shooter. And then I think that his freshman year, he showed that he has plus off-ball movement. He's good at repositioning himself. He showcased that as a freshman. There's some isolation scoring potential from behind the arc with him. He doesn't have the great burst, and the handle isn't great, but behind the arc, he does a really good job of creating space for himself. And that's one thing that you notice right off the bat when you're watching him on tape.
Yeah, there's not a ton of burst, but I do think he is a sneaky athletic player. He's lanky. He's got, he's 6'3". We'll talk about, his defense here in a second, but 6'3", maybe a bit slender, right? Yep. But he can certainly move. He can get up. He's got good foot speed, and he can put some pressure on defenses, break them down a little bit with some of that speed and athleticism. I hate to get right into question marks, but for a guy that was able to break down defenses at a decent pace, he really didn't pass the ball as well as he'd like.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm torn on that, man, because I have it listed as a positive, his secondary playmaking ability. I think that personally the offense and the shooters that were around him didn't do him a ton of favors. I think
That's
his assist
fair.
numbers would look better. He made some quality reads in the pick and roll. Like he's a patient passer, but sometimes I think that he just has a problem like pulling the trigger and making the passes, if that makes sense. Like I can tell that he can see the floor and he knows what he needs to do, but then going out and doing it. And part of that, I think, is him being a natural scorer from the jump and having to force himself to do that. I think he might have shown more as a freshman in terms of passing that he did this past season. And like I watched him a lot as a freshman, I was really excited to see him make that leap. He didn't really end up making the leap. So I think that he's in the same vein that he was as a freshman and that he still needs to improve. He's better than the numbers show because you look at the assists 2.1 to 3.1 turnovers. That's not great to look at if you're breaking down his draft profile. So I think he's better than that 2.1 will show. But still, it absolutely is a question mark still as well. You can flip it either way because he needs to improve quite a bit in order to be that combo guard that a lot of people kind of appoint him as.
Yeah, and you're certainly right. He's shown flashes of being able to pass, making some good reads. It's just the consistency. It's just
Yeah.
when you can put pressure on defenses behind the arc, and you've got some athleticism to get into the paint and kind of break them down inside. You'd like to see a guy. I know the assist numbers didn't do it justice, but you'd like to see a guy, even on a team that isn't hitting a bunch of shots, at least have 4 or 5 assists a game. And we're rolling the tape. You can see he can pass. We get that, but I definitely like to see that improve for a guy that is going to play that probably the shooting guard, the two guard role at least at first in the NBA. You'd like to see him be able to facilitate a little bit more. Um, and you mentioned the assist to turnover ratio, 3.1, 3.08 turnovers, whatever it was. I think he was forced into some bad decisions. I think he gets ahead of himself a little bit. The game still, you can tell the game is still starting to come to him. He's improved from, I mean, year one to year two, but also even within year two with, um, just in the way he's been able to calm down. You can see the game coming to him from game one to the last game as well. So, I think, again, it's just a question mark. It's not a negative. It's not a he'll never be able to do this. I think he just needs some time and some reps to let the game come to him and stop making some of those poor decisions.
Yeah, 100%. That was my second question mark is can he be a true facilitation cog? Like he had the ball in his hands a lot, but he needs to continue to develop and raise that ceiling if he can be trusted to share some playmaking duties in the backcourt. It's one of those things where you draft, I forget what podcast it was, and I'm a big proponent of like plugging good work even if it's on someone else's thing. I wish I knew the name of it, but I saw the clip. I think Simon Rath tweeted it out, and it was like if you're at that range where you're slightly outside of the lottery, draft for skill and talent. Like if there's something that these guys need to get better at, but they have a great 3-point shot and the ability to create for themselves outside the arc, go for it. I mean, we'll talk about Corey Kispert next week. It's one of those things where a guy's good at something, then take them and kind of wait for the rest to develop. And
Yeah.
my other question mark real quick is just can he add strength and weight to his frame? That's going to always be a question with him. I think that he knows he has to get bigger. He's talked about it before. He has room to get bigger. His frame is pretty long. I think his wingspan's like 6'7". Like you have, or it might be 6'9". I forget what it was, but you look at his frame. There's the ability to add like 15 healthy pounds of weight, if not more. And it leads to him struggling inside the arc sometimes. Like he doesn't draw a lot of fouls. He doesn't shoot a lot of free throws. He doesn't always look confident attacking the rim. The weight will help him on defense as well. He has the length and shiftiness, I think, to guard ones and twos. But if he's ever asked to hold his own against a bigger two or maybe step out and guard a three, unless he's a little bit bigger, it's going to be a tough matchup for him.
Yeah, you're 100% on with that, according to my notes too, right? He just At 100, it's okay. So Real GM is where I get most of the information on these guys. So 6'3", 170 pounds. That comes from Real GM. I know. I'll make the correction right now. Last week, Vrenz actually sent me a message, and he said, "By the way, I'm at 205 pounds." Even though we talked about
Nice.
him at like 170 or whatever it was. So I know that things can be a little bit different. But when a guy's listed at 6'3", 170, and you're expecting him to be even a well, if you want to be a versatile defender, then he does have to put on some weight. So I'm with you there, Jordan. Overall, I think Bones he'll be a great NBA shooter from the start. I mean, he'll be able to knock down shots no matter what. And I really like what you said about if you're right on the edge of first round or you're drafting in the second round, he is a guy that would be awesome to pick up and to see how he develops. And I think the ceiling is really high here. So let me hear your summary of Bones.
Yeah, I have him as a sharp shooting guard whose ceiling hinges upon added muscle to handle the complementary parts of his game at the next level.
Perfect. So our next prospect is Jason Preston of Ohio. Shout out to Ohio, by the way. Made a nice push in the NCAA tournament this year. It was fun to watch them. The MAC. First of all, I live pretty close to Bowling Green and Toledo, so I follow the MAC pretty closely, and it was cool to see Ohio have some success in the conference this season under Coach Jeff Bowles. And certainly led by Jason Preston, 6'4", 187-pound point guard, 15.7 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, 7.2 assists to 3 turnovers, 51% from the field on 12.3 attempts, 39% from 3 on 4.1 attempts, and a 59% free throw shooter. So, Jordan, Jason Preston's interesting. I think his story is well enough documented that we don't have to go back and explain it verbatim, but essentially a guy that didn't start playing organized basketball till late in high school and didn't get an offer from any schools until he sent out his own mixtape or highlight tape. Um, he's still, I think, could be considered a work in progress, even though he's about to leave Ohio early to go to the NBA. And I really do think he'll be drafted at some point. I think most mock drafts have him in the second round, maybe some buzz around the first round, but he's a good player. And, we'll kick it off and let's talk about his playmaking and his pacing.
Dude, he's so good. He's so smart. He has a great IQ, great feel for the game. Literally, the first note that I wrote was elite control and pacing. He's just so much ahead of his competition. He's a patient pick and roll playmaker. His eye manipulation of the defense is fantastic when he makes passes. He can make every pass. Like, he can make skips, he can make lobs, he can make outlet passes. He makes the flashy ones too. Like, he's had some no looks, some one-handed, just crazy passes. He does that. Has a little flair to his game. The court vision is fantastic. And what I like about him more than pretty much anything else, he doesn't get tunnel vision, like, ever. Even when he's attacking the rim, he's always looking to set up his teammates. He is a true, like, throwback style point guard. He can do everything. He will do everything. And that's hands down my favorite thing about his game.
Definitely. And you talk about his playmaking. You look at the playmaking and how just how fluid it is, right? You can look at the numbers, you can look at the tape, 7.2 assists, 3 turnovers. That's a nice number. And you mix that playmaking with his ability to score in the lane. Finishing, he kind of avoids contact. We get that, but he's got a nice floater. He does some good work from the mid-range and from the paint, but he can knock down from outside, off the dribble and off the catch. He shot, we mentioned it, 39% from 3 on 4.1 attempts. So not a huge number of attempts a game, but 4.1 is nothing to slough at, right? So really like his scoring chops mixed with the playmaking. I think he'll be able to put pressure on defenses. Let's talk about the athleticism later. Let's go back and just talk about the rebounds a little bit. 7.2 rebounds from the point guard position. He's 6'4". At least he's listed at 6'4". He looks super lanky. I wasn't able to find his wingspan, but he's got some good length. I wouldn't be surprised if he was 6'5" or 6'6", in reality. He might be listed at that in some other spots, but he's got some really good size, and he seems to have a really good nose for the ball. So I remember Jordan, LaMelo Ball was interviewed about his rebounding, and he said, "You know what? I played a lot of 21 when I was a kid, and I figured out the angles the ball takes off the rim. I figured out how to watch the ball and know where it's going to be and go chase down rebounds." I can't confirm that that's what Jason Preston does, but he seems to have a nose for the ball, where it's going to be, and he brings in rebounds pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not afraid to box out either. Like he can get dirty down low. Grab and go ability is great, makes great long distance passes off rebounds. Just a gift that a lot of players don't have, especially guys who are 6'4", 6'5", whatever he is. Not the most physically imposing still, like you mentioned, kind of a lanky guy. He just knows how to do it. And you either have that or you don't. And you can work on that. But a lot of guys just are so focused on everything else in their game that it's easy to overlook something like that. And I wanted to get back to the long range shooting real quick before we move on to question marks. Good efficiency throughout college. Like people think that just because he's such a good passer first that he can't shoot. He can shoot. He has legit NBA range, pretty quick release on the shot. He's a respectable catch and shoot threat, which is something that I didn't really notice a ton throughout the season until I went back and looked at his tape. That's going to help him potentially play off the ball in the NBA if he has to. A lot of his value is going to come from being that primary ball handler for a second unit or whatever he does. But he has the ability to get a clean catch and shoot release and knock down threes from deep. And question marks, I'm just going to lead in. I know that you're thinking the same thing I am. How much will the lack of athleticism hold him back? He looks a little bit slower than others at times, lacks the great burst and long speed. Going to be facing much better athletes at the next level. Those world class NBA guys. Trouble against shifty NBA guards, maybe. Can he keep up with them? Not a great vertical finisher. He got by in college by being crafty, and that's great because a lot of guys need that ability. But will he be able to live off of stuff like that in the NBA? It's just a question mark that it's going to hold some people back until they see him go out and prove it at the next level.
Yep, I've got the athleticism as a big question mark, and by big question mark, I don't mean that it's a. I guess I just mean that we didn't see him play at a high pace. He played at his pace, right? And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like he didn't get sped up. He's a very comfortable, smooth operator. And so the reason it's a big question mark is because I just don't know if he has it. He may very well have that ability and can unlock it whenever he wants and just didn't need to in college. Like just I watched as much tape as I could on Jason Preston. I watched a lot of his games throughout the season, and it just there never seemed to be a time where he felt the need to play quick. So
And
yeah, go
I,
please.
I just 100%. And my other question mark is, can he win off the dribble? And that is a huge part of that. Like,
Yeah.
even when he grabbed and go, he didn't look like he had that. Like, you can look at guys' strides, you can look at how quick you can time them if you want to, or in the half court, can he turn the corner and beat NBA guards off the bounce? And I saw that he has that floater, like you mentioned, that he goes to sometimes. He's really smart about trapping them on his back hip, and Jail can rely on that floater. Like, there's no doubt that he was able to work around that in college. But like we've both said, the pull-up jumper isn't exactly great. He was given some space in college quite a bit to operate with. The NBA is a totally different ball game. Like, he's not going to be given that space. They're not going to respect him as much. Um, it's just something that he's going to have to prove. And he played at his pace. He dictated the pace of the game, which is absolutely impressive for such a young player in college to do, because we can probably only think of 4 or 5 guys that can do that in the NBA, that can just hit the brakes on a game and make people play at their pace. But if they have to speed up, can he do that? And that's definitely a legitimate question mark, and really what's going to dictate not only his floor but also his ceiling in the NBA.
Absolutely. So I have two other question marks that I'll just touch on quickly. Like one, and they're both things that can get worked out with some coaching, with some development. He dribbles kind of high, kind of
Yep.
slow. And obviously that's a problem at the next level with quick hands. Again, you can teach that out of a guy, especially someone with a high IQ. And then at times he jumps a little bit early on passes in the lane, gets a little bit of ahead of himself. He'll get in the air and not quite know what he's going to do with the ball. I actually made that note preseason, like before this season even started, looking at last year. This year he improved on that. So again, I it's a question mark, but it's something that I think is currently getting worked out and will certainly be worked out in the future. So not terribly concerned about that. The last thing I want to say before you summarize, um, we talk about it all the time. Don't judge a guy by his competition, judge him by his tape. People will say, well, he played in the MAC. It's not, it's a mid-major conference. First of all, the MAC is full of some really gritty defenses.
Yeah.
I encourage you, if you have a random Tuesday or Thursday night with nothing going on in the winter, try to find a MAC game on TV because it is really, really fun to watch. But we'll note 2 games that he played in, 2 big games, 2 big opponents. One was against Illinois. He was matched up with Ayo Dosunmu, who we talked about before as a great defender, a strong player. They went punch for punch. Ohio ended up losing that in either 1 or 2 overtimes. But here's Preston's line from that game: 31 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 for 4 from beyond the arc. I said he had 8 assists. Guess how many turnovers? Zero. Zero.
Would you classify that as good? Like
it's pretty good.
Yeah. Would you think
it's
that's
pretty
good?
It's pretty good against a really, really good defender, a strong defender. 8 assists, 0 turnovers with 31 points to go along with it. And then against Virginia in the tournament win, he only had 11 points, but he had 13 rebounds. He had 8 assists and 3 turnovers in that game. And it was a win. I mean, it was an upset win over a 4 seed. So the dude can ball. He's still developing. I think he's a raw talent. Like we said, he's only played organized basketball for a few years. And so I'm really excited to see Jason at the next level, to see how he develops. He might not be an NBA contributor right away, but another one of those guys that if you pick him, he's got a pretty high ceiling and could be interesting. So let me hear that summary.
So I think he's a point guard with an advanced feel for the game and enough of a scoring game right now to, this is a hot take. I think he can be a trusted leader of an NBA second unit. Like even as a rookie, I think that I wouldn't have a huge problem saying, hey, Jason, go be my backup point guard. I trust that kid that much. He's just, and I know this is way longer than a sentence summary. I'm kind of rambling now, but he's so smart and he's so advanced. You can watch him play and say, I trust that guy. And you can't do that with a lot of 21-year-old kids or 22, however old he is. He'll be 22 in August. That just isn't the case for guys his age.
Absolutely. 100%. Last prospect for this episode. It's Quentin Grimes from Houston, 3rd-year player, leaving early for the draft. 6'5", 205-pound shooting guard, 17.8 points per game, 5.7 rebounds, 1.9 assists to 1.83 turnovers, 40% from the field on 14 attempts, 40% from beyond the arc on 8.2 attempts, 78% from the free throw line on 3.7 free throw attempts. Jordan, I think we're going to have to start this one the same way we started with Bones. I think the shooting stands out the most for Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have another positive that I'm interested to get your take on, because I don't know if we're going to agree here. But first, man, the shooting, like, he's vastly improved. Like, I remember, I'm a Jayhawks basketball fan. I remember when he came in, people just weren't sure about his jumper. It was a major question mark. He was hesitant after slow starts at Kansas. He would kind of get off to like an 0 for 3 start and then disappear throughout games. He went to Houston. I don't know if he completely reworked it or what happened, but he's a rhythm jumper now. Like there's kind of a dip, I guess you could say, like when he's catching it. And it's not like a slow release or anything. He gets really good lift on it now, can shoot off the catch. He works around screens very well, can relocate. That's a huge plus for him. Flashes of self-creation. Like he has a little bit of the, I'm going to lower my shoulder into you and then hit like a back dribble behind my back and then go through my legs. Like he can create a little bit for himself behind the arc. It's not just catch and shoot stuff.
Yeah.
An impressive range. Like he had several threes where they were legit NBA range shots. So I think his 3-point shooting is definitely a major component of his game. And look, man, like if you're going to fire 8 of those up per game, a little more than 8 per game, they better be good. And he definitely made the most of that. His field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, like you said, pretty much the same in his third year.
Yep, 100%. And I like the fact that he can shoot like that, and he's still 6'5" with a 6'7" wingspan. He's got a really high release. I think he'll be able to shoot over a lot of defenders. He can get up as well, and so yeah, I love his shooting prospects. I love the idea of him playing for a team like the Warriors, like
Yeah.
a team that really runs and guns. I think he'll be tremendous. Um, I think he plays great defense.
Oh, thank God, Evan.
This
I'm
oh, you're gonna
so
agree. I
glad.
was hoping we'd disagree on something for once, but
Oh man.
so this is. I can understand why you would say, you're curious what I have to say here, because a lot of people don't like him on the defensive end.
Yeah.
It's hit or miss depending on who you talk to, what reports you read, etc. I I mean, he's 6'5" with a 6'7" wingspan. He's got some good size. He's got some decent athleticism, and I really do think he can guard multiple positions for you. And I didn't necessarily see. I'm not going to say he's an elite defender at this point in his career, but I didn't see any times where he got crushed off the dribble. He was able to hang with some smaller guards, and he doesn't do poorly against wing defenders either, or
Yeah.
wing offensive players either. Excuse
Sure. Sure. The notes that I have are I noted adequate length and size. I think that's not going to be a problem. High effort when locked in. And I
me.
think
Yeah,
that in order for him to become that guy, because I remember when he came into Kansas, I hate to keep going back there, totally different player now. Like he seems to be fully embracing defense as a part of his NBA game. And I think in order to stick, he's going to have to fully embrace that. Good anticipation, active hands and feet. A guy that can move and match what the offensive player is doing. Like in his back pedal, he doesn't give up a ton of room. He but also can affect shots. And I think he can do the same thing on the perimeter. So I'm a huge fan of his defense, not only right now, but I think if he can refine some things and kind of stay locked in, like a 3-and-D role, I'll mention this in the summary later. I think that he has a really high ceiling or even a high floor as a guy like that.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm gonna move on to a question mark, and it's a strange one because basically the note is he doesn't get to the rim,
Yep.
and it feels like he would definitely much rather shoot from deep, or get to a spot and pull up. But the thing is, he's not a terrible finisher when he
Mhm.
gets there. He just doesn't. I mean, there are times where there's a lane to the basket, and he just decides to pull up. And hey, we've talked about it. He's a great shooter. We get it. So I guess the reason it's a question mark is he willing to get to the rim consistently? Is he willing to pull up from the mid range, or is he going to be a guy where you can just close out as hard as you need to, shut down the 3-pointer, and then not really worry about him on the way to the basket, because he's not really much of a passer. I mean, he's not much of a passer. I'll just say it and see what you have to say here.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to dog on him because
Right.
these are question marks. These are things that can be improved. The first one is, can he develop inside the arc, kind of like Bones Hyland, in that there's significant room for growth here. The runner and floater game that he showed wasn't great. I don't think he lacks that elite burst, which is, I hate to say that, but it's still something you have to note with guys like that. It's something that if you have that, you can work around some things. Shows flashes when attacking, but I think he just gets predictable. And that
Yeah.
if he goes inside the arc, he's going to attack the rim. He's not going to pull up or anything. Um, the thing that I noticed that I didn't even really note when watching him at any point ever, his handle's a little underwhelming to me. Like, I think that he's prone to losing it and getting swiped a little bit. Like you mentioned that Preston dribbles high. I think Grimes that almost is in that same vein, and that when he's driving to the rim, the handle just doesn't um, it's not conducive to getting to the rim effectively or beating defenses off the dribble. The other question mark is, what does he offer long term as a playmaker? Tunnel
Yeah.
vision is kind of an issue at times, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, depending on his role at the NBA level. Never been a true point guard, which heading into college, that's what people expected him to kind of be, that combo guard type guy. Doesn't make a lot of complex reads. His pick and roll ball handling, he looks to set himself up for looks, which is totally fine, like we've mentioned. But improvement as a shooter throughout college kind of suggests that it's in line with an off-ball role at the next level, and that the ball is going to be taken out of his hands quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree, Jordan. I think that one of the notes I made here is about the pick and roll passing. I think there were times where he had a look at the roll man and just didn't make the pass. He definitely uh, definitely tries to create for himself, and that's okay. I mean, that just you have to find your role, and if your role isn't a passer right now, then you've got to figure out how to contribute to your team otherwise.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that develops. It'll be interesting. I think Quentin's a good. I mean, he's kind of slated for second round, end of first round, perhaps. Well, let me hear your kind of where you think he could go, and then your summary.
I think he's round 2. Not that I don't think he can go higher, because I think that'd be fine. But I just don't know how high NBA teams are on that skill set. But I think he's a shooting guard style who has kind of shifted his game from that combo guard possibility to more of a 3-and-D role as a pro, and that's going to be valuable still either way.
There you have it. That's Quentin Grimes. It was Jason Preston and Bones Hyland. So happy you could join us for episode 6 of Crashing the Boards. You can tune in next week for a breakdown of LSU's Cam Thomas, international prospect, Alperen Sengun, who I'm going to figure out how to say his name. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but he's a good player. I'm really excited to talk about him. And we're going to talk about Corey Kispert as well from Gonzaga. If you have a player or players that you want to see us break down, you want to hear our opinions on, or if you just want to talk about them through messages or through Twitter, shoot one of us a message. You can find me at Evan R. Skilliter. Jordan's at Footnoted, FOOTENOTED. You can also DM us on Instagram. We've gotten a few on there, talked with a few of you there at Crashing the Boards Show. Get a hold of us. We're always happy to chat. We're always happy to facilitate some discussion on different prospects. So Jordan, that's episode 6. We recorded probably the latest recording we've done so far, Sunday night. This comes out Wednesday. Normally we're like Saturday morning, Thursday night. We started it Wednesday night. That was a little overwhelming, but always good to be with you no matter what day, no matter what time, Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been a blast, and I'm super excited for the next episode.
Me too. We'll see you back here for episode 7 next week. Until then, stay right, stay real, and God bless.
With the first pick. With the second pick.